Hi, eighth grade geography students. We are going to finish up what we started yesterday about the countries of the Sahel. Remember, the Sahel is south of the Sahara. It's the southern end of it. We looked yesterday, according to this map, at Mauritania. I'm going to use this before I click it big and then my cursor will disappear. So we looked yesterday at Mauritania. Remember, the only country that has an outlet to the ocean. Today we're going to look at Mali, Niger, and Chad. Mali, Niger, Chad across. And we're going to go in that order. Okay, so we're going to start with Mali, then we'll go to Niger, and then to Chad. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and increase this, make it bigger. All right, but now I have to thumb through these pictures. Sorry. Hope y'all are doing okay today. Having a good day. Here we go, Mali. Let's talk about Mali. Remember, it's just east of Mauritania. It was once the center of the Mali Empire. The Mali Empire overthrew the Ghana Empire around 1200. And if you remember yesterday, I'm sure you probably don't, the Ghana Empire came around 400 AD. So for about 800 years, it had existed there and had done really well. It was a gold haven. They'd collected all the gold. And then along comes the Mali Empire and overthrows it around 1200 AD. Their most notorious leader was Mansa Musa, who gained a reputation as the richest man in the world. And when he showed up at Mecca, I think it was Mecca. Yeah, Mecca. He showed up in Mecca to do a pilgrimage, a Hajj, and the whole world was just like, oh, who is this man? Because he was so rich. Your book describes it. This is in the pink box at the bottom of page 525. He came in 1324 to Mecca with a caravan of 60,000 people with him. He was preceded by hundreds of slaves, each bearing a staff of gold, hundreds of camels, each bearing bags of gold. His lavish gifts flooded Mecca's economy and caused the price of gold to collapse for years to come. So that was the Mali Empire led by Mansa Musa. It was an enormously beautiful and wonderful place. Maybe. Hold on to that thought. We're going to explain. Okay, the home of the Mali Empire was Timbuktu, which even today, if you say I'm going to you wanted to go to Timbuktu or something like that, you mean the epitome, the most remote place you can go, a mysterious civilization, because nobody in Europe has ever seen it and lived to tell about it. One guy, Alexander Lang, he was a Scottish man. He made it, we think, to Timbuktu somewhere around 1820-ish, 1826, somewhere in there. But he was murdered before he made it out of Timbuktu, so he wasn't able to get any report out. And then in 1827, a Frenchman, Kali, got there, and it was gone. The whole empire was gone. It had decayed so far that there was no remnants left except little mud huts. So still very mysterious as to what it must have looked like and what it was like to live there. Today, though, Mali is one of the poorest countries in the world. And I'm probably going to say that about each one of these. Mali, we talked about Mauritania, Chad, Niger. They're very, very poor countries. Okay. The Niger River flows through Mali. It is very important to the country. It's the third longest river in Africa, after the Zambezi and the Nile. But it's the most important river up in this area because it's critical to supplying water to people who live on the desert. Oh, sorry, went the wrong way. Their capital is Bamako. It's the largest city there in the Sahel. Most of the ancient and modern cities of Mali lie along this river, the Niger, because it's critical to being able to get anything done. They do a lot of cotton and rice in this area. Of course, you need that well-watered plain to be able to grow rice and cotton for that matter too. Let's move on to Niger. Before I forget to mention it, the population of Mali is 87% Muslim, but the Muslim in this North Africa region is not the same type of Islam as is in the Middle East. It's not as devout, I guess is the way I would put that. It's just a little different. Okay, so let's move on to Niger. The Sahara covers 2/3 of Niger, so 2/3 of the country is completely desert. But then they also have these Air Mountains. The Air Mountains are in the north. It's like sand, mountains, and that's it. It's so desolate. They do have quite a bit, sorry, I keep going the wrong direction. They have quite a bit of uranium in Niger, which is a really important product, a natural resource, but they haven't really can't talk today. They haven't really gotten that much out of it yet. Okay. How did Niger come about? Well, it was settled originally by desert nomads, the Tuareg people. They came in and they took control of the trade routes that had already been in Niger. They came through the mountains and got there. They eventually established the Songhai Empire, although I think the Songhai Empire was black. I think so. Yes, it was a black empire. So the Tuaregs came down out of the north and settled in Niger, but the black people that were in the area established the Songhai Empire, which is going to the Songhai Empire is really, really super old, like turn of the millennia before old. They established their empire, and they eventually are going to overthrow the Mali Empire that we just talked about. Okay. So they have mountains in Chad as well. The Air Mountains in Niger, they have the Tibesti Mountains. These are actually dormant volcanoes that rise up out of the sand in Chad. Their average daily summer temperature in Chad is well over 100 degrees. That's the average, meaning it may not get below that during the day. But they have a lot of problems with drought. As in the neighboring countries, Chad's population is concentrated in the south because it's farther away from the desert. I cannot imagine what it would be like to live in the desert like that. That would just be a difficult way of life. They are one of the poorest countries in the world with one of the lowest life expectancies. Now, they do have one river. It's the Chari River. This is the main river in Chad that flows into Lake Chad. And Lake Chad is very important to not only the country of Chad, but the surrounding countries. And it used to be enormous, like the size of Lake Erie in the United States. But today it is 1/20th of that size. It is much, much smaller. And it is the reason it has been going downhill and becoming smaller is mostly because countries are taking water out of it to irrigate, and that's part of the problem. And then also the weather is worsening as far as it's getting hotter and drier and not replenishing the lake. It is home to a wealth of fish, and of course that's a food supply for people who live in an area where growing food is extremely hard to do. The capital of Chad is N'Djamena. Sounds like Aunt Jemima, but it's not. It's N'Djamena. And this is right on Lake Chad, right near it. They've had a lot of violence here in this area between the Arab population and the black population. They've been fighting each other for many, many years. Libya, their neighbor to the north, has invaded the country 4 times. Since I believe like 1978. Between 1978 and 1987, they've invaded 4 times. But just recently, they're trying to stabilize the country, and they've begun development of their oil reserves. They have uranium and oil in Chad. They are only 53% Muslim, but you see how Islam dominates this region. As I said, not quite the same type of Islam as in the Middle East, but it's Islam. Now, the way that Christians have of getting into these areas, there are some Christians in each of these countries, but they're very minimally represented. They get into these areas by providing things that the people need, like water. If they can come in and drill wells and get fresh water to people who have never had fresh water before, this is a huge way to get in and make sure that the gospel message is getting out. We cannot tell people, people don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. And that's the gospel message, that Jesus cares. So that is Mali, Niger, and Chad. Okay, so we have finished the Sahel region. Tomorrow we move on to the Maghreb, yet another region of Northern Africa. Okay, one more thing. Your interesting fact for the day: pineapples take 2 years to grow. Okay, remember that. Pineapples take 2 years to grow. I'll talk to you tomorrow.